What is the worst first date you have ever been on or seen? I'd forgotten about this one until I saw the thread title. This was several years ago, before everyone had cell phones and I didn't have one at the time. It would have made things tremendously easier. So this chick calls me up off a personal ad and we seem to get along. She's a little older than I am and the picture makes her look like a little bigger than I normally go for, but whatever. She seems cool. It's kind of weird she wants to pick me up rather than meeting somewhere, but whatever. Things happen. I should have stopped everything when a dingy old Honda Civic rolls up and someone who's not a little older, but a lot older and a lot heavier than I expected gets out. But I don't, because I was young and stupid and didn't want to offend her by doing the 180 back into my house when it's abundantly obvious that the picture was really out of date. So I get into the car, which is full of trash, and we sat out. She tells me she needs to swing by her place, and I say, sure, whatever. Her place is in the projects, and I don't mean the kind of rundown but still nice part of town. I mean the actual housing projects. She invites me inside and I figure it's better than sitting in the car waiting to get robbed. So I join her inside, where I meet her boyfriend and kid, neither of whom she'd thought to mention before. Her boyfriend is remarkably laid back about me wandering in, apparently on a date with his girlfriend, and promptly offers me some of his stuff. Now, I'm not against doing substances, but I only do them when they come from sources I trust and when I'm around people I trust. So I decline. Mainly because even with my experience, I can't identify the mounds of colorful pills and other stuff he's selecting from. Also for obvious reasons. Her kid, meanwhile, is toddling around oblivious while the girl does whatever it is she's doing in the bathroom. Dude drops his pills and we wind up watching The Simpsons like some weird extended family. It turns out that he didn't know exactly what he'd combined either and he starts having a freak out, and since she's in the bathroom and the toddler is a toddler, guess who's stuck talking him down? Especially because he's talking about God talking to him, and God's telling him things that aren't exactly making me any more comfortable in this incredibly awkward situation. But I've done this before. I have a lot of hedonist friends, and staying calm and talking someone through a surprisingly hallucinogenic experience is something I'm comfortable with. At least compared to exiting stage right into the heart of the ghetto as it's getting dark or getting harmed if his trip takes a bad turn. She comes out sometime later to find him on the floor. She doesn't seem surprised by this at all. As if the whole evening is perfectly normal and it's common to find one's day walking one's boyfriend through a bad trip, and asks me if I'm ready to go. I ask if we should be concerned about leaving the guy there when he's got several hours to go and a kid around, but she shrugs and assures me everything will be fine. So we head to the car. She starts driving and we're discussing where to go for dinner. I know a really nice restaurant, which she says is too fancy. I know kind of a nice restaurant, but she doesn't like their food. I know a quirky hole in the wall that's kind of gross but has fantastic food, but she doesn't want to go that way. She suggests Taco Bell. I make a noise that's somewhere between, okay, and really, which she takes as agreement, and we go to Taco Bell. At this point, I'm just happy not to be in the projects, and so make the best of it. Ordering a couple tacos and being the gentleman, I pay when she orders what seems to be half the menu. My chance comes when she disappears into the bathroom. Without even thinking about it, I'm gone. I'm out the door and halfway down the block before I even realize what I'm doing, and I see in the distance back at the Taco Bell she bursts out the door and looks around, then starts shouting for me to come back. And then I see her get in the car, but she's not going home. Oh no, she's starting to look for me. This particular Taco Bell was on a main drag that backed up to kind of a residential neighborhood, so I wind up hiding behind hedges and shrubs as she patrols the streets looking for me. This goes on for 2 or 3 hours, with me skulking in the bushes as she circles the block and drives up and down the streets. I've dodged cops that were less determined. I managed to work my way back to the building, only to find her waiting in her car out front, but she didn't know about the back entrance, so I snuck in that way and left all my lights off, and locked and barricaded the door because, Jesus, the sight of someone strange lurking in the parking lot at that late hour prompts one of the neighbors to call the cops. She refuses to leave. She calls the cops a number of interesting names, judging by the screaming I hear from the parking lot, especially when they decided to take her in for disturbing the peace. And she took a swing at one of them, adding a resisting arrest charge to her collection. The next, and only time I see her, is in the newspaper the next day in the police blotter. The icing on the cake would have been if she called him to bail her out. Story 2. They said it was boneless. We were having a nice dinner of salmon and roast potatoes at a dining hall. As he starts talking about his day, I took a bite of salmon and felt a horrible pain slide down my throat and stop. Not knowing what that was, I tried drinking some water. Deep in my throat, it felt like I was being pricked, and every gulp only made it worse. I realized this must be that stupid thing my mother had always warned me about when eating fish, that you have to be careful of fish bones or it will get stuck in your throat. Well, damn. I spotted some potatoes on my plate and started shoveling them in my mouth, to knock the bone out or push it down or whatever, as the guy started telling me a joke. Well, the plan backfired, and once again, the pain became much, much worse. But now it felt like someone had driven a screwdriver into my throat and was occasionally shoving it in deeper. So the guy finishes his joke and pauses as he looks at me, awaiting laughter. I burst into tears. He says, "That bad, huh? I'm sorry. I've got other jokes." And I manage to whisper, my voice not working so well, that I have a fishbone stuck in my throat. He blinks. But it's boneless salmon. I didn't really know how to respond to this, so I just stared at him with tears running down my face. He goes, "So, do you want to leave? What do you want to do?" And I whisper that maybe if we just get more potatoes, it will go away, right? 3 plates of potatoes later, I have a fishbone still in my throat. I'm bloated and never want to see a potato again in my life. This guy just watched in confused silence while I ate potatoes and cried. When I look up, he asks if it's still there. I nod and we decide to go back to my room. As we pass by the salmon station in the dining hall, he points at the sign. "See? It's boneless." I didn't respond. When we got to my room, I called my mom and she said I needed to go to the hospital to have it removed. Freaking out, I turned to go and he insisted on coming with me to make sure I'd be okay. Sweet, right? Well, once there, he wouldn't leave. We waited 6 hours before any doctor or nurse would even see me in the ER, which I didn't mind. Some lady came into the bathroom while I was there and suddenly red liquid was everywhere on the floor, running into my stall. People definitely had bigger problems than my not being able to eat a fish properly. When a doctor came, it was some practicing med student who, without looking, said that most people think the bone is still there when it's not. Salmon bones don't show up on x-rays, so he told me to go home. I refused. Having just had the bone partially dislodged then relodged, he said too bad and went to get me checkout forms. Well, the resident doc came and reamed the student guy out, and I'm thinking, oh, thank God, they're actually going to fix me now. Well, he told the student, "No, we won't release her until we're sure it's really gone." Okay, really scary, but okay, they're going to fix it. So the doctor takes me into this room and the student comes trooping in after him. He brings in this weird boxy thing with a long cord, as thick as your average electrical cord, with a slightly larger thing on one end. He tells me that luckily for me, there's this new technology that can pick up salmon bones, and all they have to do is stick this cord. I was not a fan of this idea. Worse, he said he didn't have time to do this, and it would be good practice for the med student to try it his first time. Worse still, all the med students and nurses in this ward come trooping in to see this new technology. And worse, even more, the med kid is now nervous, and his hands are shaking. So they spray some numbing stuff into my nose. Most of it missed and just got on my nose. And then this kid with shaking hands tries to stick an electrical cord or camera down my nose while 15 people watch. So I, who had managed to toughen up and stop crying hours ago, felt an electrical cord thing go into my nose and then came pain. Med student. There's resistance. Nurse. Well, that shouldn't be. Just keep pushing. At this point, to have an electrical cord up my nose that's too big to fit, but the guy's jamming it in anyway. Yeah, I start crying again. Not sobbing or anything, just tears rolling down my cheeks out of sheer pain. This apparently freaked this kid out more and the shaking got worse. I didn't need to see it, I could feel it in my nose. So the camera or cord finally goes in and the kid looks through and can see the bone. Kid. Uh-oh, it's right there, in her vocal cords. That can mean serious damage. So he takes it out and the docs arrange for an ear, nose, and throat doc to come the next morning to remove it. But they say they cannot do it themselves because they may permanently damage my vocal cords. Awesome. Here's the best part. The 15 folks watching the camera or cord procedure all wanted a turn. The resident doc came in and told me how important it is that people get experience and how if they don't get it, they could end up doing things slowly or poorly on people who could pass away at any second. So I felt bad and gave them permission. All 15 of them. To practice with a camera cord thing on me. This was an hour-and-a-half ordeal of them sticking things in my nose and me crying and them pulling it out again and lecturing each other on technique and such. So this entire time, the poor guy I was on date with is sitting in the waiting room. Has been about 8 hours now. It's a school night and it's 3 a.m. A nurse comes in and gives me a pill and says it will relax me before this operation and will numb the throat stuff. And she says it may make me gassy. This is about when the nurses realized they had someone waiting for me in the waiting room and told him he could come back and visit me. Yeah, well, I was numbed up and not aware of much and gassy. Awesome. The next morning they put me under, got the bone out, and sent me on my way. At classes in the afternoon, I had a spontaneous nose emergency that was pretty bad. I tried to cover it up with tissues until the person next to me turned, saw a ton of tissues, and their eyes got really wide. I left. The guy texted me several days later and kindly asked if I wanted to try redoing our first date. I told him I'd be happy to. Man, The guy must really be something if a date with him almost leaves you literally speechless. Story 3. I convinced a girl who I was crazy about to go out on a date with me, and I knew I had to make it count. We lived by the ocean, and she had dropped the hint that she had never been out on the pier at our local beach. Challenge accepted. I nervously drove her down to the beach, and we proceeded to slowly walk out on the pier together, though she seemed hesitant from the beginning. We stopped short of the end, and I leaned against the railing over the water while she stood back a bit from the edge. She didn't really seem into it at all. Awkwardly, I said, "This is a great view, huh?" Just as 2 pigeons flew up and landed at our feet. Sweet, chicks dig birds, I thought to myself. To my horror, the birds began to make passionate pigeon love in front of us while neither of us spoke. I had never witnessed such passion. I quickly scanned around and saw a couple holding roses on the other side of the pier. Awesome, they look romantic. Chicks dig romance, I thought to myself. We quickly walked away from the pigeon and stood next to the happy couple. The man and woman were holding each other and both holding roses, but something seemed off. I glanced up and noticed that both were sobbing. The girl I was with noticed too. As we were both looking, the couple took the roses and cast them into the sea. I had posted us up next to a funeral, some kind of sea burial. Between animal lovemaking and funeral, I'd executed one of the worst dates of all time. Just as I had accepted my failure, my date started getting fidgety. Based on her body language and her expression, it dawned that she hadn't told me about the pier as a hint, but because she was terrified of it. Turns out she had a fear of heights in the ocean. That pier will forever be a monument to my most unsuccessful first date. Story 4. I met a girl on OkCupid. She seemed pretty down to earth and we had a lot in common. We chatted for several days through IM and emails, and I asked her if she would like to meet up and get dinner. She agreed, and all of a sudden she turned into Captain Needy Pants. The 2 days leading up to the date should have been my automatic red flag. She texted me constantly and would say things like, "I can't wait to see you." At first I thought it was cute, but after like 5 texts in one day saying the same thing, I thought she was getting a little out of control. I almost canceled the date because I was getting such mega creeper vibes, but I decided not to. She shows up at the place we agreed to meet up at, and she looks way hotter than her pictures. She's gorgeous. She might have been one of the most attractive girls I've been out with. The date starts off pretty good, and we're having a good conversation. We start thinking, maybe she was just genuinely excited to meet me. And then, about 25 minutes into the date, she reintroduces the crazy side of herself. The first thing she said was, "So, what are you doing tomorrow night?" And I was not sure how she meant it, so I laughed and said, "I'm sorry, I have plans tomorrow night." Well, this apparently was the wrong answer. She slams down her fork and she says, "You're going out with some other woman tomorrow, aren't you?" I wasn't even sure what to say, so I squinted my eyes a little and leaned my ear towards her and said, "Excuse me?" The next 5 minutes are still a mystery to me of what actually happened, but she went on a rant. At almost a yelling volume, she proceeded to chew me out about how I was a horrible boyfriend and how all she wanted in life was for me to love her. I finally was able to get a word in edgewise and said, "I am not your boyfriend. This is a first date. What in the world is wrong with you?" I get the bill from the waiter, just hand him $60 and start to leave. She follows me out and tries to stop me, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, but I need to go." She starts crying and she grabs my arm and will not let go, and at some point she's actually on the ground with a tight grip around my leg, begging me to give her another chance. I finally break free and get to the parking deck and drive away. She's standing at the exit to the deck with tears streaming down her face and she's screaming something at me. I rolled up all the windows so I couldn't hear her. I drove away and was so thankful that day was over. She continued to blow up my phone for the next week and a half. On the following day, I had almost 30 missed calls from her and over 50 text messages. I finally had the number blocked by Verizon and the drama stopped. I'm totally thankful she didn't know where I lived because I'm sure she would have stalked me. Story 5. Blind date, arranged by a mutual friend. We get there, she's already eating appetizers. I'm 10 minutes early. Then she orders the most expensive dinner on the menu and tells me she did it because she knows I'm paying. Small talk fails, and for 45 minutes she complains about how no one is refilling her wine glass. She finishes the glass every 20 seconds. She mentions how she was told that I make a decent salary multiple times. I try to be civil and change the subject. Awkward conversation topics ensue. Nothing even close to first date etiquette follows. 3/4 of the way through, I go to the bathroom and our waiter walks by. Asks me if we're doing a reality show or something along those lines, since he has seen this disaster in motion. We talked about how wild this woman is for about 5 minutes, and then I asked him to stop at our table and ask about the bill. I immediately say split checks and give him $80, roughly $40 for my bill and $40 for his tip. The date looked shocked and ended up not being able to pay her bill, so the friend who put us up got a call and flipped the rest of her check. Her total came to be about $75. Last blind date ever. Story 6. I went to college at Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska. This was nice because it was near an airfield, so even insecure, slightly chubby women like myself had a chance at a date. I met an Air Force guy with all-American blue-collar looks at a bar called Guitars and Cadillacs. That should have been my first clue, yeah? So, on a Saturday, Airman Joe or whatever says he'll pick me up from my dorm at 7. I got a call at 7:30 from him saying that while he was at the gas station, some lady bumped into his car and somehow shattered the window of his 1994 Camaro. Warning, warning. So he goes back to the base to pick up his friend's car, a Plymouth K car with plastic for the passenger side window. We went to a movie. We got a Taco Bell for dinner. Mind you, I am not particular about big money dates, but when the conversation is waning between discussing the movie Face Off and a person's favorite drink, they start to get fidgety. After Taco Bell, he's driving me back to the dorm when he pulls over into a gravel parking lot, puts the car in park, and grabs me for the worst, most intrusive kiss I've ever experienced. Of course, my head has been pushed back onto the plastic framing the window, and I've used enough force to back away from this that my head pops through the plastic sheeting. "Yeah," I say. "What are you doing?" "I thought you'd be into it," he says. I say, I think you better just take me back home. Get me back to the dorm right now, please." The nice thing was that the wind blowing through the plastic sheeting made it nearly impossible to have a conversation on the way home, and this would be my worst date ever. Story 7. I met up with a girl I had chatted with online a bunch of times. I live in Toronto, but was visiting her city, Midwest US, on business. The date was going great. We ate dinner, then we went out for some drinks. She had one drink and collapsed. She eventually got back up. We sat her down. She seemed like she was incredibly intoxicated, but she had only had one drink. No one came out and said it, but I could tell everyone in the bar thought I did something to her. I grabbed her phone, called one of her friends, told them to come pick her up because she's sloppy. I'm on a first date with her name, and she collapsed. I think someone might have spiked her drink. Not exactly the best situation for me to be in, as this is her first date and all. Her friend said, "Not again." "What do you mean, not again?" "Last month she took some because she wanted to set up the guy she was with. He was really rich or something. It was on speakerphone. Felt good, man." I will never forget how people's attitudes changed towards me after that. People who were talking to each other about how I'm going to take this girl instantly apologized and tried to help me get out of that situation. Someone eventually called an ambulance. She was unemployed at the time, so I'm guessing she got a nice bill in the mail. Yep, she definitely sure did. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 8. Unless someone passed away in a date, hey, who knows, I do believe I have the worst date ever. I mean, ever. So I'm newly single from a bad breakup of 5 years. She leaves me for another gal and her friend decides to right a wrong and rob me of everything I own, save for my dog, bed, and some of my clothes. Anyways, so I'm a few months along and try a dating website, Yahoo Personals. A gal messages me. She's Hispanic. I'm white, I don't discriminate. And I'm like, all right, your picture looks okay. You type a little innocently, immature, but text is sterile. I give her a chance and we meet a bit south of me in a mall. It's public. They have restaurants. If things don't work out well, that's fine. We can go our separate ways. So I got there and she messages me where she is in the mall and I see a gal, but it doesn't look much of anything like the gal I've been talking to. Sorta, but like her uglier sister. Well, it's her. She photoshopped her pictures. A lot. Her smooth face in the pictures? Nah, moles all over. I'm not talking 1 to 2, I mean like dozens. All over her face. It's so strange and repulsive. Most guys would be like, I'm out, bro, but I don't want to hurt her feelings. I figure I'll chat, see what's up. I introduce myself to her. She says hi and we walk through the mall. I notice a few minutes later someone is following us, shop to shop. Oh, that's my mom, she says. It bothers me a bit and I ask, why is her mom here? By the way, we're both 25 plus. She explains her mom came along for the meet with her brother-in-law and his wife. Pregnant, by the way, 8 months along. The gal keeps trying to kiss me in every store, but her mom is literally in the other aisle giving me the eye. It was so creepy, not in a good way. So we, after an hour, go to the food court and get some food with the entire family. They seem nice, but it's just too creepy. They invited me back to their place for cards and family games. They want me back at their place to grill me about their daughter. Not good for me. My stomach starts acting up as we're finishing up dinner, but it's not feeling like my stomach, like a weird diarrheal feeling. I excuse myself to the bathroom where the feeling of needing to go intensifies quickly. I enter the bathroom, downing a medicine as I enter. I'm sweating and I do not feel good at all. I saddle up to the toilet. Not much, and the feeling moves into my kidneys. It's all fast. I'm sweating. I don't feel good at all. It's not food poisoning. My stomach is fine, but I feel like I have a thing moving from my kidneys to my Jimmy. I'm not liking this at all, and it's getting bad. I see her outside the bathroom, and she says her family has gone to meet us nearby for me to follow them to their house, but we're parked at different areas of the mall, so we're to meet up at a nearby Denny's. While driving there, my Jimmy feels like it's on fire. The pain is so intense I'm afraid I've broken something and don't know what, or how. We get to the Denny's parking lot and I bust inside. Customers only, the sign says, but I don't care. I get into the bathroom, pull up to the bathroom. I actually briefly pass out for a second. I catch myself falling against the wall in pain, but nothing comes out. I zip up and stumble outside. My ugly date is standing next to my car and the world goes gray. Such a weird feeling. I fall into the grass on my knees. The pain is so intense I'm half a second from passing out. I try to mumble something to her about being in mortal pain, that I might need to go to the doctor. And there she is, 1/2 an inch from my face, hairy moles all over her face. I wanted to retch, but I'm in so much pain and she closes her eyes and moves in a bit further for a kiss. A kiss! While I'm passing out in the pain. I push her away and stumble to my car and manage to peel out. I'm not sure how I made it to the highway. Should have gone to the hospital. I don't even know how I managed much of anything. Once I got back to my apartment about an hour later, the pain was gone. Just a little pebble in the toilet. Story 9. I met up with a girl who I had met through a mutual friend. The first time we hung out, there were the 3 of us at a football game. She bought the tickets and they had an extra. The talk turned to grad school and I joked that I was only there to meet a wife. She laughed and said, "The only reason I'm in town is to find a husband." Then she says, "We should just get married and start doing what we want to do in life." This sort of joking continues throughout the game and I leave. A couple weeks later, she's back in town and asks to hang out. I met her at a bar and we seem to get along really well again. She asks me to go back to her friends with her. Things start getting heavy and we begin to have intimacy. I ask her if she's on birth control. She says she's not. I ask if she has protection. She says she doesn't. I tell her that there's a pharmacy a block away and I'll just go run and get a package and be right back. She tells me not to bother. I start to remember our previous conversations. I stand up and say, "No offense, but I really don't want a kid right now. And I'm firmly opposed to relying on morning after pills or other methods for birth control. I'm going to get some protection." She tells me not to bother coming back. Now I'm wondering if she was insulted or if there's something else going on. I go home and chalk it up to all the bad karma I gave myself in college. 4 months later, I see on Facebook that she's engaged to an attorney. Story 10. My worst day was way back in 6th grade. Even though girls I thought was cute then, which I actually didn't know until late high school, I was a super shy, geeky kid who played tons of computer games and Legos. But late one night, after a school dance where I slow danced with one of the most popular girls, her friend called me up. In the most typically cute middle school awkward conversations between the girl's friend and the girl, we became boyfriend and girlfriend. So we set up a first couples date that next Friday to go to the park, maybe the mall, etc. At that time, I started playing the PC game Mech Warriors 4, so I was obsessed with Mech Warriors. I loved them so much that I poorly drew battle mechs all the time. So, being the cute but shy and totally inexperienced kid, I had the bright idea of spending the day drawing battle mechs at the park. I showed her my pictures of a Mad Cat Mark II, what a Gauss cannon looks like and how it works, just the nerdiest 6th grader thing you could possibly think of. For 2 hours, I basically forced the poor girl to try and make up the best battle mech with the best weapons. And though she was trying to get us to go to the mall, I wanted to show off my drawing skills and my knowledge of Mech Warrior. During the date, I thought I was the hottest thing in the world. The date ended with her making an excuse to leave and me thinking, nailed it. The next day, I was met with awkward looks and stares. And finally, a classmate told me that the girl I took on the date thought I was a creeper nerd and I was made fun of for the rest of the year as an unpopular geek who was obsessed with robots. There wasn't even an official breakup either. Though, on a happy note, I learned how to break dance over that summer and became the most popular guy in school for all of 7th grade. Middle school. You should call her up sometime and remind her that they're still going out. Story 11. Dating this girl who I later realized was pretty much using me to buy her stuff. I took her out to dinner and surprised her with concert tickets to Jared Cantrell, of Alice in Chains. She was excited, but then proceeded to spend most of the rest of dinner on the phone telling her friends. Kinda rude, but no big deal. Fast forward to the night of the show. I take her to dinner and she acts icy cold, barely makes conversation, and shrugs me off every time I try to make conversation. Take the SkyTrain down to the venue, doesn't want me to touch her at all, pulls away at incidental contact even. We get to the venue, go inside, and I buy us a couple of drinks. She curtly thanks me for the drink and then says she'll be right back. I grab my drink and head to the stage where I see her talking to some other guy. It becomes very clear quite quickly that they're together, or at least have been before. So I walk up and say, "There you are. What's up?" She replies, "Oh, it's you. Hi, this is my friend." He gives me a nod and a look that pretty much says it all. They're together, and I've been played like a fiddle. So now I'm in this horrible situation. Jerry Cantrell goes on stage in 30 minutes, and I'm gonna have to either A, go home now, wallowing in misery, or B, stay and see the show, knowing this woman is enjoying it with her toy, less than 20 feet from me. So I do what any other Alice in Chains fan would do. I get hammered and sloppily dance or mosh for the next 2 hours, trying to ignore that stinging feeling every time I see her. The show was great, and the crowd was awesome, minus the two, so that was a plus. I went home as soon as Jerry left the stage, said "eat this" to the girl on the way out, and pretty much sobbed in the ride home. So pathetic. But at least I learned a lesson about how evil some girls can be. I learned to protect my heart more closely in the future. Worst date I've ever been on. Story 12. I'm not sure if this counts as a date or not, but after my roommates and I found a free kitty on Craigslist, we decided to adopt it. We went out to the guy's house and my roommate brought her BF. The guy giving away the cat was only doing so because he still lived with his dad, as an adult over 20, but his dad was getting remarried and the new wife was allergic to cats, so they made him give it away. This is all fine and good, but the creeper part comes in when he takes the cat, still in the cage, and proceeds to talk to it in an extremely high voice, telling it how much he loved it and would never forget it. This is also okay, a little strange, but okay. But then he proceeds to lament about how he's losing his only friend and about how he can never get a girlfriend and asks us about our relationship status. My roommate pipes up and says her BF is waiting in the car, but I'm more than single and also looking. At this point, the guy is like a falcon diving down on a mouse. He grabs my hand, kisses it in the most awkward way possible, and asks me out on a date. He also asks for my number and to keep him updated on his precious baby, about how he likes to draw on DeviantArt and about how his drawings are art and not traced. He gave me his account name and asked me to look him up, followed by asking for my phone number. I decide to give him the number. My friend, with a huge troll grin on her face, loads the cat into the car and we leave. He blows me a kiss as we leave. I looked up his account just for the lulz after a few days. It was full of poorly drawn Sonics, but also a new pic that had a depiction of a blue Sonic kissing a pink Sonic's hand. My friend then told me it was definitely a sure thing and that I should go for it. Never trust a free kitty on Craigslist. Story 13. Met a girl online. Yes, I know, but I had had relatively good experiences with this before. I was very much not in the mood for a serious thing at the time either. So I met this girl and her friend at some house which they were parked outside of. I walk up to the car and the girl looks slightly less attractive than the two pictures she had up. Only 2 pics in her profile and both from the same angle. Normally a red flag, but who cares? I took a chance. But she doesn't seem terrible at first. So we go to a grocery store because her friend needs something. As soon as I get out of my car, her friend hits me up for gas money. I'm like, what? I kind of shrug it off anyway. Maybe your friend is just crazy. The girl I'm supposed to be seeing gets out of the car and is a good 15 pounds heavier than she appeared to be. She's wearing pants that my grandpa would have worn when he was alive and a 2 sizes too small Mighty Morphin Power Rangers jacket. At this point, I'm starting to prepare for an emergency evac as this is going downhill fast. As we walk into the store, I'm getting sudden terrible whiffs of BO. I realize in horror that they're coming from her. Keep in mind, we're outside, the wind is blowing, all of her clothes are on, and I can still smell her funk. So now I know I need to bail. I feign interest in whatever the hell she was talking about while I figure out an escape route. As I actually make real eye contact with her for the first time, I realize she also has a lazy eye. So I go to the bathroom in the grocery store and call my friend. I tell him to call me in no less than 10 minutes and tell me I'm supposed to be at a party he's hosting within the hour because I promised I'd help set up. The stinky girl gets in my car and finally my phone rings. I play out the whole thing, yada yada yada. Oh, so sorry, I promised I'd be there, etc. So she asks if I can give her a ride to where she's staying. Gladly. So the whole drive there, she tells me this story about how she harmed a girl in high school because she dumped a good friend of hers or something. I was beginning to wonder if this girl was intentionally trying to make me as uncomfortable as humanly possible. Never again. Story 14. OkCupid date in the major metropolitan area. The young woman is 25, a college graduate, attractive in her photos, and apparently keen on getting together after a bit of correspondence. Super. We arranged to meet for sushi. She showed up, a good deal more portly and pimply than I had expected, with 2 of her friends, another couple, male and female, in tow. She explained, oh, they just wanted to come into the city with me. Within the first minute, the day was awkward and off-putting, but the friends quickly separated from us and I figured things would at least progress pleasantly. As we walked toward the restaurant that we had agreed upon, she suggested going somewhere else. Fine, no big deal. We sat down, had our orders taken, and waited. Within 5 minutes, her two friends entered and took a nearby table. Bizarre, but whatever. Dinner conversation mostly consisted of her regurgitating marketing jargon while attempting to regale me with tales about working at an Apple store. I'm a political consultant by trade, so I wasn't exactly enthralled by the delicate science of being a floor salesperson for MacBooks. We finished eating and her friends joined us at our table. A female friend, who was absurdly more attractive and far less poorly or pimply than my date, informed us that there was a shop she wanted to check out before leaving the city. I was invited to come along. It turns out to be a store that specializes in, let's just say, adult materials. For my part, I was wearing a Brooks Brothers button-up and a pair of khakis. After listening to the incredibly overweight female shopkeeper, my unattractive date, with whom I had never discussed intimacy and in whom I had no interest, inquired, "So, are you into role-playing?" At this point, I was thoroughly dissociated from the situation. I only managed to blurt out, "Do I look like I'm into role-playing?" She didn't say much after that, save for a strange aside in which she commented, "You don't look all that interested. The last guy I took here was so excited and was touching everything." Yep, evidently the store was a frequent early date destination. Eventually, I walked her and her friends back to her car and attempted to part gracefully with my traditional, non-interested handshake. "Don't I get a hug?" So I awkwardly embraced the little troll, careful not to let her acne-scarred cheeks come into contact with my face. We said our goodbyes and that was it. Still kinda irked that I didn't get to see her friend try on a corset. Story 15. I brought a girl back to my house for dinner and a movie. I had previously made a bet with her wherein if she won, I'd make her dinner and bake pie. But if I won, she had to kiss me. Either way, win-win, right? So we finish dinner and go back into my bedroom to watch a movie. Midway through the flick, she says, "I'm still a bit hungry. I think I'll go grab a quick bite of the leftovers." She gets up and goes into the kitchen. I decide about 45 seconds later, as my stomach grumbles, that this sounds like a great idea. I arrive in the kitchen to see her standing over my silverware drawer, emptying into her purse. I was shocked. I'd never had a date try to rob me before. I asked, "What in the world are you doing?" Her reply, "Oopsie." I'd have been angry already, but the girly giggling answer just put me over the edge. I walked up, looked in her bag, and saw that she'd only managed to grab some of the bad silverware so far. At that point, I reached over to the counter and grabbed a piece of the pie. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Don't forget your dessert." Then, while holding her gaze, I dropped the pie into her purse and smashed it up as best as I could with the sides of the purse to make sure it got there nice and good. Had her out. Never saw her again. Story 16. I've told this one before, but it is too good not to tell again. Met a girl via OkCupid. We chatted for about a week and then she asked me out. Nice, I thought. We made plans to go to dinner several days later. Day of the said dinner, she sends me a text saying, "Pick me up at 5 p.m., which was odd because she never mentioned needing a ride before, but okay, why not? Turns out that she lives 40 minutes away. I pull up at her place and she's outside smoking. Her profile said non-smoker and she never mentioned it before. It's getting dark and so I can't see her very well. I realized after she hugged me that she had some sort of goo, jelly, jam, cream, I don't know, on her face because now it had rubbed onto my cashmere sweater. We're in the car for no more than 2 minutes when, without asking, she starts fumbling with every AC, heat, and radio knob in the car. "I'm just trying to turn up the volume," she said, as she worked the hot and cold slider back and forth. After about 10 seconds of whatever song happened to be on the radio at the time, she tells me my taste in music is horrible and tells me she's an amazing singer who will be a pro one day. Something else she hadn't mentioned. So I ask her to sing something. She gets very quiet and stares off for a while. About 5 minutes of silence passes before she says, "Want to hear me sing?" I still don't understand what came next. She plugged her iPod into my car, put on some horrible kiddie pop music like Hannah Montana while singing. No, mumbling the words to the song so quietly that I couldn't hear her. After the song was over, she turned to me and said, "See? Aren't I great?" I thought she was joking, so I just sort of snickered and nodded. She screamed, "Are you making fun of me?" And scared me. I carefully and fearfully shrank back and said, "No, sounds great." He got very happy again, saying, "Great, I knew you would love me." And then rambled incoherently for a few minutes. I zoned out because it's about this point when I realize she's crazy, and I start to freak out. She didn't smell of drink, so I'm wondering what she could possibly be on. I decide against the original restaurant plans, and my mind starts scrambling for locations that could take her that are cheaper, and I won't be recognized or bump into anyone because I can tell it will be a disaster. 10 minutes of silence passes. She turns to me and says, "You're a schmuck." And I just smile and nod. She goes on to ramble about nonsense for a while. Several more minutes of silence pass. She turns to me and says, Are you taking me home? We've been on the highway this whole time and not going to pass up on this get out of jail free card, so I ask, do you want me to? And she says, I don't care, which I take as a yes. I turn around at the next exit and at least another 20 minutes of her rambling to herself with long pauses go by. We go off at the highway at the exit near her house. It was about this time when she decided to unbuckle her seatbelt, reach over and start kissing my face. Not my neck, not my ear, my face. I froze in terror. This chick was crazy enough to grab the steering wheel and yank it, to put the car into neutral while driving. Who knows? I just say, please stop, that tickles. Which apparently she takes as flirting and backs off, saying, you're so sweet. Shiver. A few minutes later, we pull up in front of her house. She looks at me and says, wait, are you taking me home? And I said, you are home. Have a good night. Well braced for who knows what to happen. She quietly looked at me and said, really? And I said, yep. She got out and left without another word. I go home and drink, trying to wipe the night from my memory. The next morning, I found her cell phone in my car. It's covered in the same slime she got in my sweater. Fortunately, I still had her text with her street address, so I put it into an envelope and mailed it back with no return address. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.